Hey guys, welcome to another video and thanks for tuning into this one. This video, I want to touch on this common question I get from a lot of international students that are trying to work in the United States. I think, most people want to come here, train, and then work as an instructor to build their experience. And the reason why this is important is because, if depending on where you're from, you may need to get X amount of hours. And usually it's not the minimum required by the authority that regulates the aviation industry from where you're from. So it is very important that when you come in, try to, first of all, know what the minimum requirements are and look for a way for you to say, maybe get more hours if you want to do that and if you can afford to maybe become a CFI, Certified Flight Instructor. So let's talk about why this is important, because if you finish training and you finish with the minimum required hours and you go back to your home country and you've just barely met the minimum requirement hours or required hours, what will happen is that you end up going into the queue to join these other people that are probably around the same hours as you. And competition at that point becomes really steep because everybody you all have the same hours. On the other hand, when you are able to go back with more experience, maybe more qualifications, it increases your odds of achieving or getting to get a job, which is the ultimate goal. The goal is to be able to go back, get a job. So how do you go about being able to work in the United States after you finish your training? That's what we're talking about in this video. If you're new here, welcome. If you're a returning subscriber, thanks for tuning in again. I have really missed, just being back here. I was working for about 10 straight days. I was on call for most of it, but I actually worked as well. And it was hard to make videos in, not my usual space. I wasn't in my usual space. So it was quite a challenge. But coming back here, I feel like I'm able to get into my creative space and just let things be. And, when you have the things that I need to make the videos, then I'm always glad to come out with all these videos and share this information with you. So please, if you find value in this one, don't forget to drop a like on it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It goes a long way. And of course, I always say that the best and fastest way to reach me is most likely Instagram. So if you have any questions, you can send me a message on that. I'll try to respond. I get a lot of messages, but that's how I try to keep up. I don't always go to the YouTube comments every time. I usually do that once in a while. So keep that in mind. So let's start with the important things first. Before you come to the United States, one of the things that you'd have to do is to find a flight school, and then you apply to the school, you get selected, right? And then you go in to get your visa. And this is where I always talk about, if you have been following my channel for some time, you probably have seen some videos where I talk about M1, F1 visa and the differences. Now, understand that I'm not an immigration expert, so I don't want you to take my words for it. So make sure you do your own research and maybe find out the updated information. But one thing that you need to understand is that if you have an M1, generally speaking, it is more restrictive. And that means that when you come over to the States, you are able to work, but I believe it's very temporary. And with that comes the challenge of being able to get the hours that you need. So that's why, generally speaking, they often recommend that you go with an F1. With F1, you're able to work a little bit longer. There's still some restrictions on that, but at least you're not limited to a very short window. I believe with the M1, you can do less than 6 months, if I remember correctly. And with the F1, you can do a little bit more than that, depending. You can even extend it if you are qualified for it. So one of the questions is that you may have is, okay, how do I find a school that offers F1 or M1? Now, generally speaking, when you go on Google and you search for flight schools, generally you find a mix of schools. And some of them may issue M1 only. Some of them may issue both F1 and M1. Some of them may have just F1. And you have to be very careful, because if you apply and you start this process and you spend all this money and you're only able to get an M1, you're likely going to be stuck with that, because if you already booked your visa appointment and you show up to the interview and you get approved on M1, it becomes a lot more difficult for you to even change to an F1. So this is why it's very important for you to make sure before you even start the application, you know exactly what you want and you know why you want it, so that way you're not having to change in the process. Because we can talk about the changes. If you need to change, and by the way, people come over and try to change. You can change, it's just more complicated, it gets more expensive. So my recommendation to you is to follow these steps that I'm about to share with you. All right, the first thing you want to do is to go to studyinthestates.dhs.gov, and then you can go to the search box here and just type in school search. All right, when you do that, it takes you to this quick link that you can select. So the first one, it brings you to this school search form where you can put in some information if you have it. So let's assume that you don't really have a preference of where you want to train or where you want to school, right? Because some people, for example, may want to stay in New York, or they want to stay in Florida because they have family there, or they want to stay in California because they know somebody there. If you don't have a preference and you're just trying to search for schools that are, say, for example, that only have F1 or offer F1 and M1, then this is what you want to do. So the next thing you want to do here is you can put a school name if you think you have a school in mind. By the way, let me just make this bigger so that you guys can see it better. I'll do that. Make it zoom it out so that you can see it. All right, and I'm going to do that. All right. So if you know the school name, you can type the school name in there. All right. If you don't have a school name, what you can do is that for flight training specifically, you can come here and choose flight school, and then choose if you want just F1, which is what I would recommend, so that you don't have to start an M1 and then you have to change the process, because you have to pay for some of these things and it can be expensive to start all over again. So choose F1 and then you apply. Now, once you select that, you can see it will show you a list of schools and including colleges or universities. For example, you have Louisiana Tech University, with your address, and they offer an F1. It has 288 results that you can go with, right? And with that information, you can pick a school that offers, say, maybe F1 or maybe just M1, depending on your goals. Now, why is it important to come with the F1? Like I said, the M1 has more restrictions. The F1 has a bit of restrictions, but at least gives you more room to do things. For example, work as an instructor. So let's kind of just go through the process. So you go in to get your visa, you get your F1, you come to training, you finish your training, and now you are now an instructor. Now, how do you then go about finding that job? You have to understand that before you apply to a school, try to make sure that the school already can hire CFIs. I mean, generally speaking, most of the schools would train their students and then hire them once they complete training. However, if you go to a school that does not hire their student, then that might be a problem. Okay. The other thing that you need to consider is that know that even though the school may preach and say that they would hire their students, or they hire their students, they will only hire their students based on generally need, and secondly, based on the performance of the student. You have to understand that if a student isn't performing well during training, or doesn't perform well during training, even though they're able to get their license, they may not be suited or suitable for the job. So it's like you still have to go through an interview, and hopefully they hire you based on your qualifications and your ability to be a good CFI, right? The other thing to keep in mind is this duration of work is usually limited, and your goal is generally to be able to fly and get your experience up so that when you go back to your home country, you can get the job that you want. But this can often be the reason why a lot of people will just focus on trying to fly, and not teach their students how to truly be a pilot. And what I mean by that is you become a CFI that is just focused on the hours. You don't want to be that kind of person, because what will happen eventually is that you will lose a lot of students when they realize that you just want to fly to get your hours. And then secondly, you would then not get the next set of students, because remember, students always talk to each other. If they know that this CFI is all about the hours, they wouldn't want to be a student of yours. And that means that your ability to get your experience or your hours slows down, and you may not have students, and your performance drops, and the school may actually get rid of you. So that's something that you just want to keep in mind. And I thought I should share this information with anyone that may find it valuable. If you have stayed up to this point, please don't forget to drop a like on the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comment section and share your experience as well. I'm sure maybe if you're in flight school already, you probably might have seen some of these things I've talked about or that I've mentioned. And if you're about to get started, tell me what you're looking forward to, and I'd love to respond to your to it, just to share some of my insights and knowledge. If you have questions, feel free to ask as well. I would like to respond to that. It took a long time for me to say. That's all I got for you guys. I hope you found value in this one. See you next time.